The Cayo Perico Heist is one of the best ways to make money in all of GTA Online. I've made millions of GTA dollars from it over the years. It's easily one of my favorite heists, and one of my favorite things to do in all of GTA Online. This is for a lot of reasons. Mostly because you get a very decent payment for completing it. You can make well over $1.3 million every time you do it, sometimes way more depending on what the targets are. But the Cayo Perico Heist is great for a lot more reasons than just the money you can make from it. It's also great because, unlike the other heists in GTA Online, you can do it completely by yourself. It's also really fast and really easy to replay and just really fun to do. It's especially fun because there are so many interesting and rewarding ways that you can do it. The problem with having so many different options for how you can complete the heist, though, is that it can be difficult to know which ones you should do. So in this video, I'll go over some of the options you can choose from and how everything works, as well as some general tips and tricks for doing the heist well. So now, the guide. Like the other heists in GTA Online, the Cayo Perico heist can be done in 3 different ways: aggressive, stealthy, or the big con. It's always up to you which way you do the heist. This is really decided by the approach vehicle you pick, as well as the setup missions that you do, and the way you decide to enter the compound to steal the main target. And unlike the other heists, you can change your approach on the fly, like during the heist, which can be pretty exciting. First, you will need to do the Gather Intel mission. You'll have to do this every time you want to redo the heist. Then you'll have to do the approach vehicle setups, the equipment setups, the weapon setups, and the heist itself. You will need a plan to get into the compound, and how to escape with your targets. I'll go over how to do all of this now. Now, the first thing you need to do for the Cayo Perico heist is gather intel. To unlock all the approach vehicle options, you will have to take pictures and send them to Pavel. You only have to do this once. Go to and take pictures of the infiltration points on the island. Make sure you go to the West Beach, the main dock, the North Dock. Also make sure to take a picture of the Longfin in the North Dock, the South Drop, the North Drop, the Airstrip, and the drainage tunnel. And you have to just swim to the drainage tunnel, you can't really take a picture of it. When you're doing the Gather Intel mission, you will have to find out what the main target is in the compound. To do this, you will have to go to the tower and hack into the camera feed for the compound. Then, scroll through the camera feed until you find what's in the vault. Also, if you haven't already, look through all of the camera feeds and all of the angles of the camera feeds to unlock all of the compound entry options. You only have to do this once. You should also check the office for paintings, because these are the easiest secondary targets to get when you're doing the heist solo. You should also check the rest of the island for the secondary targets that you want to take. Take pictures of the secondary targets you want, and then send them to Pavel. It's random what they are every time you do the heist. Also remember, if you're doing the heist solo, you will only be able to carry a certain amount of secondary targets. So it's only necessary to scope what you want. The secondary targets you want to get is totally up to you, but I usually try to go for the most profitable ones. Anyway, here's a list of all the potential payouts for the secondary targets. And this is a map of all the possible locations that they can be. Once you're satisfied with your scope out of the island, and you've unlocked all the approach vehicles, you can plan the next step of the Cayo Perico heist, which is to do the approach vehicle setup. You will only need one approach vehicle, so because there's a lot of options for this, what one should you use for the heist? Well, I'll go over how each one of them works in the heist, and hopefully it'll help you decide. Starting with the Kosatka. The setup mission is pretty simple. You just have to go get some sonar equipment from another submarine. It's actually pretty cool. You can explore basically the whole submarine. It's like a bigger version of your own Kosatka inside. When doing the heist with the Kosatka as your approach vehicle, you can choose to spawn your Kosatka in these locations. Then you swim to the island. When you choose the drainage tunnel, then this approach is probably the best for doing the heist as quickly as possible, especially if you're trying to do the Elite Challenge. I recommend this approach if you can get all the secondary targets inside the compound, which means paintings inside of the office if you're doing it solo. That way you can quickly escape with full secondary targets right from the compound. Then escape by jumping with the bike into the water. The downside of using the Kosatka though is if you don't have 2 paintings in the office or other good secondary targets in the compound, you'll have to leave the compound and go to them. And leaving the compound to get the secondary targets like this can be a little bit difficult, especially without a guard disguise. I'll explain this more later also. You can of course get the secondary targets and guard disguise first, but because of the limited places the Kosatka can spawn in, you'll have to swim and run pretty far. So you are better off using a different approach vehicle if you want to do the heist using the guard disguises, which I recommend doing. Next, the Alkonost, the big ass plane. I don't really know how to say it, I'm sorry. The mission to get it is pretty annoying, to be honest. It's also in 2 parts, which is annoying. You'll have to steal it and fly it to the hangar. I find there is usually a lot of enemies during this mission. The second part, though, is really simple. You just go to a house and kill some dudes to get the pilot to fly for you during the heist. Pretty easy. Using the plane during the heist is pretty cool. You fly way high up over the island and then you can jump out. This allows you to land basically anywhere on the island, except of course the compound. I tried. So this means you will have to know exactly where you want to land before you jump, which can be a little bit difficult if you aren't good at parachuting or you don't know your way around the island. But overall, jumping out of the plane is a pretty good option. It just requires a bit more planning to know where you want to land, and make sure you have a plan to get into the compound. Next, the Velum. The Velum mission is really easy to do. It's basically the same as the Gather Intel mission, which means it's pretty slow and boring, but easy. Using the Velum in the heist is a bit different than the other approaches. You spawn in at the airport as a smuggler in disguise, which is pretty cool, and feels very sneaky. Unless you have a gun, of course, in which case you'll immediately get caught. But you can buy guns and have them stashed at the airport hangar first. The problem I have with this approach is you always start at the airport, so you always have to go all the way across the island to get to the compound. This is just slower, because you always have to start on foot, far from a bike. And if you want to use the guard disguise, and it isn't at the airport, which sometimes it's not, it'll be harder to find it and get it. Because remember, traversing the island without a guard disguise is a lot more difficult and much slower. Next is Stealth Annihilator. The Stealth Annihilator mission is also a bit annoying to do, because like the Alkonost approach, it's in 2 parts. The first part is, you have to go onto a yacht or somewhere and kill a bunch of enemies, then take the helicopter. Then you'll have to do another short mission to get the pilot to fly for you, just like the Alkonost mission. It's not really difficult to do these 2 missions, it's just kind of annoying to have to do 2 instead of 1. Anyway, using the Stealth Annihilator in the heist is pretty interesting. You rappel down a line from the helicopter, which is of course really cool. My only problem with this approach is you don't have much freedom to drop where you might want to. You can only drop in these locations. So it's kind of similar to the Kosatka approach, except you drop in only these locations. And you can't use the drainage tunnel approach, unless you steal a boat, I guess. So the Stealth Annihilator approach is much more limiting than the other approaches, and it really does not offer much of a benefit over them. It's still pretty cool to rappel from the helicopter though. Now the patrol boat. The patrol boat mission is probably the worst approach vehicle mission. It's actually pretty difficult, especially the one in the Merryweather building, because there's like a lot of enemies in that mission. Another mission that can happen is it spawns in the LMOC, and then you have to drive it all the way out into the ocean, which is very tedious. It's also very disappointing just how slow this boat is, especially considering what this boat is in real life. It's easy enough to use it during the heist, to get to the drainage channel or to go wherever you want on Cayo Perico. But it's definitely a lot slower than Longfin, so it's just not worth it to use it during the heist, especially because the setup missions are much more annoying to do than the others. So that leaves us with the Longfin. The setup mission to get this is much faster and easier than most of the other ones, especially if you have the Phantom Wedge. I think the Longfin is the best option to use on this heist, mostly because it gives you the most freedom to do the heist how you want. And you can change where you want to go in your whole plan on the fly, because it allows you to use every possible compound entry, easily and quickly, including the drainage tunnel. This is because the Longfin is very, very fast, so you can go anywhere on the island very quickly, Remember, the Longfin is like super fast, like it's faster than a T-20. The other great thing about the Longfin approach is you are disguised as a smuggler at first. So if you want to get the guard disguise, you can go right up to the dock and just walk right to the guard disguise. As long as you don't have a gun out, you won't get caught by these guards at the dock. With the Longfin, you can go right to the guard disguise, then right to the tunnel, or to the truck, or the grappling hook, or bikes, or wherever you want to go to get to the compound. Using the Longfin is usually how I do the heist. Now, the next thing to plan is your compound entrance strategy. Which entrance strategy you use, and the approach vehicle that you choose, will decide which equipment setups you should do. I'll go over all of the options now. First is the drainage tunnel. To use the drainage tunnel compound entrance, you have to do the cutting torch setup mission. This mission is very easy to do and set up. It's best to use the Kosatka or the Longfin as your approach vehicle to get right into the drainage tunnel. But it's always technically available on the heist if you did the cutting torch setup, so you could drop onto the island with the stealth Annihilator and steal a boat and go right to the tunnel. This compound entrance is best for doing the heist as quickly and stealthily as possible. Next, the main gate. There are two ways you can go through this. First, if you find a guard truck and the guard disguise, you can just drive right through the main gate. The guards won't even notice that it's not one of their own dudes. I don't know, they're pretty dumb. This is a map of where all the guard disguises of where the guard truck can be. It can also be driving around. Usually these two things are close to each other. Entering the compound like this is basically the big con approach for the Cayo Perico heist. The other way to get through this gate though is to blow it open with explosives. You have to do the demolition charges setup to do this. This is like the aggressive approach for the Cayo Perico heist. Remember, you'll be detected when you do this. So I recommend if you want to start blasting, do some other missions to lessen the guard's impact on you. I'll talk more about this later too. Another entrance to the compound is to climb right over the wall with a grappling hook. This is a stealthy approach, or it could be paired with a guard disguise and be a big con approach. You can do this in two separate places, the north wall or the south wall. Doesn't really matter which one you do. To do this though, you will need to find the grappling hook somewhere on the island. Here's a map of all the possible locations it can be. Another way you can get into the compound is by using the side gates. You can go through either the north gate or the south gate. To do this, you will need to kill at least one, sometimes more guards to get the codes for the door. It's kind of annoying because you don't know which guard you have to kill, but it's usually one or two. This compound entrance is pretty cool because it can also be used as an exit once you have the main target and want to escape the compound. There's really no advantage to doing it like this. This is also a stealth/big con approach, but something to remember is you can easily be detected if a guard or a camera spots a dead body. So be very careful which guards you kill, and where they are when you kill them. Something else to consider is you can be detected by the guards and still use any of these compound entrances, except the guard truck through the gate. But it is still possible to do the heist well detected by the guards. It just might be a lot harder. The next thing you have to plan for the heist is your escape strategy. Leaving the compound, you can choose to steal a bike and jump into the water. This is the fastest escape route. But if you haven't gotten your secondary targets yet, I recommend stealing a bike or a jeep and going to them first before you escape. Once you're ready to escape the island, you can choose from a few different escape routes. First and most obvious is steal a boat right from the dock. This is pretty easy and can be done from either the main dock or the south dock. Or I guess you could shoot a guard boat or speedophile and just steal that. You could also just swim out into the ocean. Remember, you can use rebreathers to stay underwater for a lot longer. You could also take the plane at the airport. To do this, you should take out the air defenses at this tower first and then fly away. It's not difficult to take down the air defenses. It's just an extra step that you'll have to do to escape if you want to leave in the plane. You could also swim back to your Kosatka, but only if you use the Kosatka as the approach vehicle. When you have a basic plan for the heist, the next thing to do is the mandatory setups. You will always have to do the plasma cutter or the key codes mission.
Why are you gonna shoot a proxy?
This is to get the main target. You will always have to do the fingerprint cloner mission too, so you can hack into the vault. You will have to pick one of the other two. Which one you pick will depend on your heist strategy. If you want to do the heist aggressively and blow open the main gate, then you will have to do the demolition charges mission. If you want to do the heist as a big con approach or a stealthy approach, which I recommend doing, then you will only need to do the cutting torch mission. You could also find lock cutters on the island. Here's a map of all the possible locations for it. You want to get the cutting torch or the lock cutters so that you can cut the gates in front of your main target and your secondary targets silently. Once you've decided on an approach vehicle and a strategy to get into the compound, then the last thing you have to do is the weapon setup mission. In my experience, it's best to use the Conspirator, but it is really up to you what you use, because your approach might work better with a different weapon loadout. Another thing you can do to plan for the heist is you can hire support crew to make the heist a little easier. I basically never use any of these, but you definitely can if you want to. I'll explain all of them now. Most of these options will require your air defenses on the island to be disabled. First, the Airstrike. This costs $12,000. You can drop a targeted airstrike from a laser jet on an area marked with a flare. Next, the supply drop. This costs $15,000. The supply drop gives you a minigun and up to 10,000 rounds, 5 RPGs, and 5 sticky bombs. That's per player. It's dropped in a crate for the players to collect. Next, the sniper. This costs $25,000. The sniper will use a silenced sniper rifle to shoot the targets that you mark for him. It is possible for him to miss these shots though. Next, the helicopter backup. With this, a buzzard will come and attack the guards for you. This will draw enemy fire away from you. Next, the Recon Drone. Paige Harris provides a reconnaissance drone that reveals the positions of the guards on the island. This also works inside El Rubio's compound, but it's not really necessary because, in normal mode at least, the guards show by default, so this is only really effective and necessary if you're doing the heist on hard mode. Next, the weapon stash. You can get your selected loadouts stashed in a duffel bag in the hangar at the airstrip. This will prevent you from being detected when using the Velum approach, like I mentioned earlier. Also, you can only do this if you have the Velum as your approach vehicle. Otherwise, you'll have the weapons anyway. You can also do some extra setup missions to potentially make the heist easier. This is especially necessary if you want to do the heist while being detected, but I rarely use these options. First is the distributing supplies. For this, all you gotta do is destroy weapon supply shipments. This will limit the weapons the guards can use to shoot you during the heist. You can also disrupt their armor. This prevents the guards from having any body armor at all, although the heavy gunner is not impacted at all. You can also disrupt their air support. This prevents the guards from using buzzards when you are detected. You can also find some cutting powder. If you manage to find this on the island during the Gather Intel mission, you can put it in their water at the water towers. During the heist, the guards will have reduced firing accuracy if you do this. So yeah, the Cayo Perico Heist has a lot of options. Hopefully this detailed explanation of how everything works can help you decide what to do for your own heist. If you were wondering what the best option to do this heist is, well, it's really up to you how you want to do the heist, and I encourage you to try some of the different options. But if you want, I find the best strategy is to do it like this. First, gather intel, obviously, and find the guard disguises. Then find your secondary targets. Then use the Longfin approach, especially if you have a phantom wedge. Get to the island and steal the guard disguise as the first thing you do when you spawn into the heist. Then steal your secondary targets and go to the compound. Usually I do this through the drainage tunnel. Then escape by jumping a bike into the water and swimming out to sea. I will have a whole video detailing how I do this, it will be linked below, as well as a full playthrough using each approach vehicle and compound entrance. Anyway, I'm also making a lot more videos now, and not just guide videos, so stay tuned for a lot more to come. If you have any questions or comments about the Cayo Perico Heist or anything in GTA Online at all, please let me know. I'm always happy to reply. Also, I just want to say a huge thank you again for all the support on my channel. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. See you next time.